said the person must be a judge or qualified to be so. The Attorney General's comments on this issue, and I'm not speaking about Anil, I'm speaking about Basil, reinforces what President Baines has said. And there was one eminent judge who is now redefining what fit and proper means in the context of choosing the next GECOM chairman. This evening, we have a panel comprising eminent persons and respected persons. If I can start from my left, we have Attorney at Law Ronald Wordsmith. Next to him, accountant, community activist, spokesperson, Nigel Haynes, our own Attorney General, and Honorable Member of Parliament, and His Excellency, President Jaguar. The late President Jaguar, in 1995, ascended the Bill number 15 of 1995 to enshrine in our Constitution that 3-3-1 formula. This provision saw unanimity among all the political parties in Parliament. And if I can remind those of us who had black hair then, and some who had hair on the heads, that particular time we had the Working People's Alliance in Parliament, the People's National Congress, the People's Progressive Party Civic, and the United Fruits. There was no dissent in enshrining the 3-3-1 formula. After the departure of Ambassador Louis Collins as chairperson, this entire process started using our laws. And that was when then leader of the minority remained afterwards to the opposition. His Excellency the late Desmond convened meetings among the opposition political parties in Parliament to prepare a list of 6 names not unacceptable to the President. Then check. Again, His Excellency the late President Jacob. At that meeting, a number of persons, including persons qualified to be a judge, were put up. And remember, Chen Jagan and Hugh Desmond Hoy were the architects of this 3-3-1 formula. And he chaired the meeting, from which Edward Hopkinson emerged as the first post-Rudy Collins chairperson. Subsequent to that, he also, Lee Desmond Hoy, chaired other meetings that saw Duvnant Singh, Senior Counsel, as chairperson, that saw Major General retired Joe Singh, and recently retired Dr. C. Surajbali. And these two architects of this provision, neither anyone in the political arena, even civil society, had any problems with a fit and proper person, referring to a person other than a judge, or qualified to be a judge, who could hold the position of chairperson of the Elections Commission. I also want to add that whenever we had to choose that list of 6 persons to go to the president, as we sat in the opposition, very vocal and very involved were the ABC countries, the Americans, the British, and the Canadians. And one person recently said to me, all of a sudden on this issue, the ABC went DEF, deaf. Even more deafening is the eminent persons who still are around today. And I'll mention two of them, Dr. Clive Thomas and Dr. Rupert Rupnaran, sat in these meetings. Sat in these meetings. And both Rupnath Singh and Steve Surjbali were nominees of the Working People's Alliance. We're not hearing from these eminent persons anymore. And so, we are here today, and I am no lawyer, just was a lawmaker for a number of years. But when we reformed the Constitution in the early 2000s, and it said persons who are exercising judgment in our judiciary should not only look at the written law, but look at the intent of those who made that law. And in our Constitution, and it will tell us, not only do we have to look at the convention and practices locally, also internationally when these judges are making their decisions. So we're here today, and we want to especially welcome you and to express our appreciation for Anil and the legal team, plus the People's Progressive Party for today's event. And we are going to be starting with our first presenter. On the issue. And let me take this opportunity to now invite Attorney at Law Ronald Wordsmith to make a contribution at this time. Ronald, a very bright young man from a very legal family. I want to ask him this.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I wish to thank the organizers of this afternoon's event for inviting me. In particular, Mr. Nandlal, who has made it a practice every time there's one event such as this to let me know. I suspect he's daring me to say that I'm busy or that I can't come. The last event I attended at the Sleep Inn Hotel, the crowd was much smaller, and I see it's grown significantly. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if that's a sign of something. But congratulations to the organizers for getting so many people here this afternoon. The issue that we're discussing may eventually be addressed by the courts, and I don't wish to prejudge the issue. There are persons whose business it is to offer detailed legal analysis, and I wouldn't attempt to do so, merely to offer my own insight into the nature of the problem from my perspective. I should add, of course, that while I'm a former president of the Bar Association, I don't speak on behalf of the Bar or on behalf of anyone else except myself. The persons who were nominated, Christopher Ram, Ms. Shah, Professor James Rose, Major General Norm McLean, Lawrence Lachman Singh, Ramesh Duku. Of those persons, only Mr. Ram is an attorney at law. I taught Mr. Ram at the University of Guyana, I think in 2006 or 2007. And if he would have done 2 more years after that at the Wooding Law School, he certainly would not have met the 10 years to be considered eligible for appointment as a judge. And so there really is no one on the list who one can say, in the context of the strict legal requirements for appointment to judicial office, meet those requirements. As you all understand, that has not been one of the criteria for appointment as chairman of the Elections Commission. And so one can safely say that since that provision has been in the Constitution, Article 161, the interpretation that it starts off with a judge or someone who has been at the bar for 10 years and is therefore eligible for judicial appointment is not a strict interpretation that's been given so far. And so the new view that is emerging is new. And it goes against what has been settled practice and interpretation. one would hope that the persons who are promoting that new view at some point in time would explain to those of us who are interested in the decision about the legal basis on which they've come to this conclusion, so that persons such as myself who dabble in the law can analyze it, can see whether you're referring to a certain case, that Judge such and such said this in Mozambique, Judge such and such said this in Australia, and so we can understand how you've come to that conclusion. As far as I know, that has not yet happened, but I certainly hope it emerges from the Office of the President or the Attorney General. But in an attempt to analyze it for myself, we come to the next set of words, fit and proper. What fit and proper means doesn't really carry any special meaning in the context. Now, because the words fit and proper follow the words a judge or eligible to be a judge, there is a rule in statutory interpretation which suggests that where a general set of words such as or fit and proper follow specific words, like a judge or somebody who can be a judge, that those last words, fit and proper, are interpreted in the same context as the words which follow. So, for example, if I say cats, dogs, and other animals, one would expect that, or other animals within the usual course of things, may refer to domestic animals, or animals like cats and dogs. In Guyana, we have a peculiar act called the Interpretation of General Clauses Act, which I'm sure Mr. Nandlal will refer to in far more detail than I'll attempt to do, which suggests in Guyana for that limitation that I described, or other, and then the general words, for those words to be limited to the words which come before, that the word similar should appear, or similar. So in the example I gave, cats, dogs, for you to say that it's limited to the sort of category the words before follow, there should be cats, dogs, or similar animals. So you know, okay, so we're talking cats, dogs, and domestic animals, because or similar appears here. There is another view, however, that in constitutional matters, and I've been reading earlier today about some cases in Jamaica, which suggests that constitutions fall in a special category and shouldn't be subject to this sort of limitation. I say that to say that on this area of law, while there are certain compelling views in the direction that I've heard Mr. Nandlal espouse, it's far from settled law. The issue is further complicated in Guyana by what is obviously a very bad draft. And I said with greatest respect to the persons who came up with the Carter formula, which has served us fairly well for so many years. It's really not clear what fit and proper is. And it's obvious in retrospect that the persons drafting that should have offered greater guidance about what fit and proper could be. It would appear in the past it was concerned with the reputation of the persons. A fit and proper is somebody who has some sort of standing in society, who is held in esteem, who is well respected, etc., etc. One may take the view, if you want to consider whether the words which come before a judge or somebody capable of being a judge explain what are those characteristics other than just the strict legal qualification that someone should have. The view may be that somebody who is eligible to be appointed as a judge or who is a judge is well respected in society, has distinguished themselves in their field. The person reflects sober judgment. They're prepared to accept full-time employment, which is a limitation in Article 161. That the person is considered to be fair and impartial, and in the context of what we're referring to, we may want to consider they're free from political, I'd use the term baggage, but it suggests that politics is something bad, meaning the person doesn't have any overt or open political affiliations, they aren't holding a leadership position in any party. And one may also, given its importance in Ghana, that the person is expected to be free of any racial bias. So this isn't someone that's part of a group that suggests some sort of ethnic bias, which would obviously point to a difficulty in them maintaining some sort of equilibrium in the context of the chairman of the Elections Commission. I wouldn't wish to single out anyone in the list, but there is the view that one should consider whether the persons who are named on those lists, if you wanted to imply these other quasi-judge-like criteria that I referred to, someone sober, free of political bias, etc., etc., whether the persons on the list meet that criteria. I think the persons are fairly well known in society, and you can all evaluate that for yourself. This isn't Parliament, and so the laws of defamation apply here, so I'll be very careful about what I say about anyone in particular. But there is the view that some of the members on that list do not meet that judge-like criteria that would make them a fit and proper person. And this is something that if the matter were to become contentious, the court would have to consider. Another difficulty I had with Article 161 is that it contains the words "not unacceptable to the President." I've been unable for myself to find any legal guidance about what this means. It suggests that the President has carte blanche in whether he considers this acceptable. This interpretation would be most unfortunate because it could lead to the sort of situation where no one really knows what the President thinks or why he thinks it. And the rule of law expects that no discretion should be absolute. A person who is vested with the discretion must, of necessity, when required, be called upon to explain it. It leaves us with a situation where there is no obvious solution to the problem in the immediate short term. And what I'm most interested in, speaking as someone who is not a member of any political party, is pointing out the great disservice that is being done to the country by this problem. It creates suspicion, it creates mistrust. Elections in Ghana are some of the most expensive per capita worldwide. We've gotten tremendous financial support from friendly countries, which support I don't expect will continue indefinitely. But every time we have an election, it causes the country to come to a standstill. Persons are fearful, persons are on edge, and it goes on for 6 months, 8 months, a year. And it's something that as a country really must move past. And so I think our political leaders have an obligation, of all political parties, that where issues like this arise, must of necessity demonstrate to the public that yes, this is a problem, but this is a problem that we are prepared to work out by working together. There's a great cliche in American politics about reaching across the divide and working together. And I think from what we can glean from the media that sometimes this is a lot of nonsense. There are situations where persons are hopelessly divided. But we're a small country, and in the grand scheme of things, while our problems might seem overwhelming to us, they are fairly small problems, and they're problems that can be resolved. And I have no doubt that the persons who are political leaders involved in this process, on sober reflection, recognize that they must communicate more effectively with each other and with the persons who listen to them. As Ms. Landau will probably suggest and has pointed out to me, while the courts are available as a mechanism of resolving this, it is an undesirable solution to the problem. One, because it will take forever, and in the meantime we will be stuck in this state of limbo with the political tension and uncertainty that it creates, with the growing mistrust in our society which we can ill afford. And so we come back to the issue of, well, one, we start off with a draft in the Constitution that really doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It may have worked well in the past, but it's obviously not achieving what it's expected to achieve presently. And therefore I think the solution or the suggestion that there be dialogue at the highest level, not at the level of the Attorney General, is one which I would welcome, and I would urge those responsible to make it happen for the best interests of the country and for the best interests of everyone affected by this. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ronald. The next person we have to present is accountant Nigel Williams. Nigel, sportsman, has been writing. Hi, sorry. I think I know. Sorry, Nigel. Yes, Nigel. Accountant, sports administrator, and a person who's very concerned about our country. So let me invite Nigel to the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. To the head table, former President Barajagio, former Attorney General Anil Nanglal, and my good friend Ronald Bort-Smith, and all the former ministers. I'm happy to see you here, and all participants. I'm impressed by the turnout, and it's a great occasion to discuss a matter that is close to the heart of many Guyanese, and one that is at the fulcrum of our democratic system. That is the selection of chairman of GECOM. It is fitting that we have this discussion at Umanayano, a YY ward for meeting place of the people, as we seek to crystallize, nurture, and grow our democratic system to benefit all of us. My fellow Guyanese, brothers and sisters, I am here to voice my opinion on an issue that concerns all Guyanese, an issue that could slow or stymie the forward motion of our democratic system. If those among us who have the power and know better do not seek to expeditiously resolve the current impasse over the appointment of the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, we will be failing in our duties. As responsible citizens, regardless of which political umbrella we perceive ourselves to be sheltered by. As it pertains to the current hold-up surrounding the appointment of the chairman of GECOM, the relevant extract from Article 161(2) of the Constitution of Guyana pronounces on the alternatives therein that A, the chairman of the Elections Commission shall be a person who at the time of this election must hold office as a judge of a court having unlimited jurisdiction in civil and criminal matters, or B, has held office as a judge in such a court, or C, has jurisdiction in appeals from such a court, or D, who is qualified to be appointed in any such court as a judge. Now, all the foregoing alternatives relate to judgeships with varying features, and each alternative carry equal weight under the Constitution of Guyana in the process of selecting the chairman of GECOM. The following alternative has the exact weight as the alternatives in the judgeships category, and it is the alternative recently presented to the President by the opposition leader. The alternative is fully compliant with the Constitution of Guyana and caters for any other fit and proper person to be appointed by the President from a list of 6 persons not unacceptable to the President. The meaning of "or" in Article 161(2) is strictly an alternative to preceding and subsequent options. The alternative, any other fit and proper person, where other herein refers to a person or thing that is different or distinct from one already mentioned, and it is unambiguous evidence that this alternative is neither dependent nor does it carry any less rank than the preceding alternatives. The President's pronouncement on the alternatives in Articles 161(2) seem to place excessive emphasis on someone who is a judge or qualified to be a judge. However, this emphasis does not in any way diminish his constitutional option or alternative to choose any other fit or proper person. Attributes such as intelligence, impartiality, integrity, virtue, wisdom, good temperance, fairness, or display of good judgment are all attributes of being a fit and proper person. It is appropriate to note at this point that nowhere in Article 161(2) is the phrase "any other person" used. Thus, we should avoid using this needless contrivance. It seems to me that the legal standing of the President to find the list not acceptable has several dimensions, including whether one person on the list is unacceptable, or two or several persons on the list are unacceptable, or all 6 of the persons on the list are unacceptable. Thus, if only one person on the list is determined by the President to be unacceptable, only the President has the option allowed by the wording of the Constitution to reject the entire list of the 6 persons submitted. The Constitution does not define an acceptable person. However, it seems to me that if the list is accepted by the President, it follows that all 6 persons on the list are fit and proper persons based on the phrasing of the Constitution. Therefore, determination of the applicability of whether anyone on the list is fit and proper is wholly dependent on the President of Guyana and his acceptance of the list as submitted by the opposition leader. The nominees submitted by the opposition leader are only birthed as fit and proper persons as a result of the President's acceptance of the list. It is at this point that I intentionally refer to the Greek thinker Plato, who noted over 2 millennia ago that the measure of a man is what he does with power. The statement by the President as having great patience and being unhurried in the context of the appointment of the chairman of GECOM is the antithesis to the posture that should be taken by the President on a matter that impacts the cornerstone of our democratic system. This leads us to discussions on the spirit and intentment of the law, reasonableness, rationality, courage and justice, unconstrained, unfettered and absolute power, capricious or arbitrary interpretations, and to deliberate on form and substance. And whether Article 161(2) of the Constitution binds the President to both the letter and spirit of the law. It is clear to me that the spirit and intentment are not captured in the specific wording of Article 161(2), as constitutions invariably fail to do, and instead rely not only on the written lines of the Constitution, but also on reason, common sense, and intentment. It would be a loss to our budding democracy if common sense and the purposiveness of our Constitution is replaced by strict adherence to the letter of the Constitution and does not accommodate its spirit and intentment. Appointing a GECOM chairman unilaterally is a non sequitur. Once the President rejects the first list and the leader of the opposition continues to submit nominees for the chairman of GECOM as required by Article 161(2), the submission and rejection cycle could continue for an interminable period. We are a country at a point where important choices have to be made. As our leaders make efforts to place Guyana amongst countries that have functional and reliable democratic systems, it is vital that the deeds and actions of our leaders embrace a democratic culture. Ours has been a tortuous and sometimes bloody journey, from British Guyana and to Guyana today, with the founding fathers of our nation coming to prominence around the 1950s, and during the period participated in free and fair multi-party elections, commencing in 1953 through to 1964, then resurfacing again in 1992 in post-independent Guyana, and continuing uninterrupted through to May 2015 general elections. The belief of many Guyanese and the international community is that general elections held on May 11, 2015 resulted in the first election of a PNC leader to the office of the presidency under free and fair elections held in post-independent Guyana. In this light, our current president stands unique and his affirmation of the articles of the Constitution of Guyana in letter and spirit and in form and substance will reverberate in a manner that crystallizes a democratic culture that encompasses all Guyanese during his period in office. And when the presidential baton is passed to a newly elected president, we will have a stronger democratic destiny together. The courage of having the faith to act in a manner that benefits not some Guyanese, but all Guyanese, is a courage that is incumbent upon our leaders. And as we navigate the rising tide of Guyana's valuation that will benefit richly from our recently discovered offshore assets, it is especially important that our leaders continue to treat as mandatory the growth of our democratic culture by their deeds and actions. It is extremely clear to me that the appointment of the chairman of the GECOM is one of the key pillars that must be anchored in an inclusive and timely manner that will stand as a testament to our maturing democracy now and in the future. I will now comment on some limitations of Article 161(2) of our Constitution, where it is silent on several pertinent matters or lacks specificity. 1. No time limit is set for the opposition leader to submit or resubmit a list of persons to the President. 2. No time limit is allocated for the President to state whether the named persons are acceptable to him and/or to identify his choice of a fit and proper person. 3. There is not a statement on a specific number of times that the President can reject lists that are determined by His Excellency to be unacceptable. 4. No provision is made in Article 161(2) for a meeting or meetings between the President and the opposition leader to find common ground for an acceptable list to be submitted to the President. And if the names of the other acceptable person or persons could be included by the opposition leader on the resubmitted list. And 6, the President does not have to give a reason why he rejected the list, aside from saying the list is not acceptable. In concluding, it is worthwhile to note that Article 161(2) of the Constitution of Guyana also provides for a list of 6 judges to be submitted to the President by the opposition leader. The Constitution also provides for the rejection of the entire list of judges as not acceptable to the President. And unfortunately, the aforementioned considerations would be just as relevant. Thus, a timely and just solution regarding the appointment of the chairman of GECOM depends on how the President discharges the powers vested in him under the Constitution of Guyana. And it is my profound hope that at this meeting place of our people, we embolden the President to act judiciously and expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Both presenters so far, I think, have been hinting at the issue of dialogue at the highest level and for the strengthening of our democratic institutions. Let me just recognize a few persons in the audience. Commissioner Shadi, Commissioner Gunraj, and Commissioner Ben, along with former ministers Nocta, Gajraj, and members of Parliament, plus Mr. McGarrell, Prime Minister. At this stage, let me bring our Attorney General, former Attorney General, Member of Parliament, prolific writer and head of the PR Committee of the PPP, Anil Nanda.
Thank you, Mansoor, Leader of the Opposition, and my colleagues at the head table, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, my colleagues, members of Parliament, former ministers of the government, the Honorable former Prime Minister, comrades and friends. It is a pleasure for me to be afforded an opportunity to speak to you here this evening on what must be one of the most important issues facing our country today. All of this are my writings on this matter already. And I had some difficulty in compiling and assembling my thoughts for this evening. But I managed to summarize from where I last left off, and I will I'll begin by speaking from that point in time, and then I'll address some other issues which I believe needs to be addressed. Exactly 1 month has elapsed since the Leader of the Opposition submitted a list of 6 names to the President for the appointment of a chairman of GECOM. I can say with virtual certainty that the unsuspecting public would never have predicted the controversy, conflicts, disputations, and colliding constitutional interpretations which have erupted since. A month after, the matter is far from resolved. The President has rejected the names submitted and have offered an interpretation of the relevant provisions of the Constitution, which is hopelessly inadequate and erroneous. In an attempt to clarify, his Attorney General has added even more confusion to the imbroglio. The Leader of the Opposition has requested clarifications and a meeting. This request has been rejected. Instead, the President has proposed that a nominee of the Leader of the Opposition meet with the Attorney General, and I quote, in order to avoid further misinterpretation and or misunderstanding of this important constitutional matter, unquote. And that quote is extracted from the letter that the President sent to the Leader of the Opposition. It is unfortunate that while he regales the nation about social cohesion and national unity at frequent intervals, the President is unprepared to meet with the Leader of the Opposition on such a crucial issue. Such a meeting would have certainly exposed the President to a different interpretation of the Constitution from the one presumably fed to him by his Attorney General. Fortunately, the Leader of the Opposition has indicated his willingness to participate in the engagement proposed by the President. In the meanwhile, political tensions have risen high, suspicions have been excited, and the fear of rigged elections have returned to stalk this land. In my view, having regard to our political history and from where the imbroglio has originated, these fears are not without foundation. After all, we have gone through the process of appointing a chairman of the Elections Commission on 5 previous occasions over the past 25 years, using the identical constitutional formula. On each occasion, the exercise was completed with seamless ease, and was devoid of any rancor or conflict. No one ever expressed the view that the language, spirit, or intendment of Article 161(2) of the Constitution were ambiguous or obscure. Mr. Desmond Hoyt, a senior counsel, was shouldered with the constitutional duty of presenting 4 of those 5 lists as opposition leader. He appeared not to have encountered any difficulty in construing the constitutional requirements or compiling names for those lists. Over the years, he provided lists with the names of Guyanese of diverse and disparate academic qualifications, technical skills, and professional pursuits. On each occasion that he submitted such a list, the sitting president, without question, selected one person from the list submitted. Although profound legal and other controversies surrounded the 1992, 1997, and 2001 elections, all emanating from the then opposition, none touched or concerned the process by which the chairman of the Elections Commission was appointed. This was never, ever a matter of contention. Never, ever. The first time that the table has turned and the opposition has now become the government, this hitherto simple and non-contentious process has suddenly become extraordinarily complicated, complex, and controversial. The press has been inundated with opinionated interpretations of Article 161(2). I am as guilty as any of this charge. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry Lal has suddenly become a constitutional expert. The interpretations proffered have ranged from the moderate to the bizarre. One contributor in the Kaichur News has been arguing relentlessly that Article 161(2) contemplates only judges, former judges, and persons qualified to be judges, and that the phrase, quote, or any other fit and proper person must be confined to person of that genus. He argues that the jus dem generis rule must apply in interpreting that phrase. My colleague, Mr. Birdsmith, made reference to that phrase. He asks rhetorically, why would the framers of the Constitution place so much emphasis on persons with judicial and judge-like qualifications? He asked that question, and perhaps I should answer it. I will do so in due course. Recently, Professor Duke Pollard, a retired justice of the Caribbean Court of Justice, entered the fray and lent his weighty name to a similar argument. The esteemed professor posits thus, and I quote, "In this context, the applicable criteria of choice are clear, to wit, a judge with specified experience, a person qualified to be such a judge, or other fit and proper person." The quote continues, "The employment of the pronoun other speaks volume," says the learned professor, "and must be interpreted to mean that such other fit and proper person must possess the characteristics of the 2 named preceding persons." Unquote. That is the sum total of the distinguished professor's argument. It is clear, therefore, that though not alluding to it expressly, the learned professor is employing the jus dem generis rule in his interpretation of Article 161(2). I submit with deep respect that both of these gentlemen are wrong and are guilty of complicating a very simple matter. Why is there this overemphasis, as it is argued, on judge and judge-like qualifications? To understand that, Mr. Nadir rightly alluded to the fact that in interpreting a constitution, in particular, as any other law, but a constitution which is regarded as an organic document, a document that is alive, it is necessary to go back into the history of what existed before and what inspired a change, if there has been a change. So what existed in the Constitution that Dr. Jagan, that the Human Rights Association, that Manzoor Nadir, that Clive Thomas, that Rupert Lutheran wanted to change? What was there before that was so unsatisfactory that Mr. Nigel Hines said produced rigged election results? What was there? You know what was there? The only and singular qualifications which were there qualifying a chairman of the Elections Commission was a person who was a judge, a former judge, or a person who is qualified to be a judge, full stop. That was the only qualification that was there. The agitations that followed, the recommendations of change which was canvassed for, was to increase those qualifications to embrace persons other than a judge who is supposed to be a judge or a former judge, and those who are qualified to be a judge. It is as simple as that. So that is why I label this article "An unnecessary controversy continues," Article 161. It is absolutely unnecessary. And that is why Mr. Manzoor Nadir made the point that Chedi Jagan and Desmond Hoyt, the two architects of this formula, along with President Carter, who was obviously the arbiter, they knew the background. They knew that judges, former judges, and people of judge-like qualifications were the narrow requirements which they struggled to change. And the changes were effected. Two changes were effected. One, that the president no longer had the power to make the appointment by himself, because that was the power which existed before the change. And then Carter designed the formula that was designed to bring consensus that the list must come from the opposition leader, having consulted with the other opposition parties in the parliament, but at the same time must simultaneously find the concurrence and acceptance of the president. Implicit in that formula is consensus. And that is also reflected in the composition of the Elections Commission which came out of that negotiation. And that is why we have a balanced Elections Commission. 3 from the opposition, 3 from the government, with the chairman representing or enjoying the confidence of the opposition leader as well as the president, at least at the appointment stage. And that is why he was given a casting vote. So that is the history. That is the history, and that is the reason for the change. And if that is understood, the controversy will disappear. Firstly, the judicial and judge-like qualifications were the sole qualifications for the chairman of the Elections Commission under the 1980 Constitution. This was found to be unsatisfactory. In 1991, to accommodate the Carter formula, the Constitution was amended by adding the words "any other fit and proper person." The clear intention was to expand the qualifications in order to embrace persons other than those with judicial and judge-like qualifications. The words, I quote, "or any other," the words "or any other" were not whimsically chosen. They were carefully and calculatedly chosen. And this is the reason why. Any other formulation of words could have been used. But the word or any other, those were the words that were used. Or other. Article 239 of the Constitution provides that the Interpretation and General Clauses Act, Chapter 201, Laws of Guyana, shall apply for the purpose of interpreting the Constitution. Section 5 of that act defines the word or, other and otherwise. It doesn't define it, but it explains the effect of it. It says this: the words or, other, and otherwise shall be construed disjunctively, and not as implying similarity, unless the expression similar or some other equivalent expression is added. So when you read the Constitution, it says judge, former judge, or persons qualified to be a judge, or other. You hear what the law says? It must be interpreted disjunctively, not as implying similarity. Meaning that you're going into a different category of things, not similar to that which preceded it, not similar to judge, not similar to former judge, not similar to persons qualified to be a judge. That is what the laws of the country says. We have to forget what we are reading and what we want the law to say. I am dealing with what the law actually says. The word disjunctive, I went ahead now to define what the word disjunctive means. The word disjunctive, according to the West's Legal Thesaurus and or Dictionary, denotes an alternative, a contrast, or an opposition between the ideas it connects. So situate the word or now and give the effect of what disjunctive means. Judge, former judge, persons qualified to be a judge, or, and the or is disjunct, it means an alternative, means you can have something other than what is there. It must be contrasting. It must be the opposite. That's the word that they use. Contrasting, alternative, or opposite between the ideas that it connects. So there is no similarity between the two categories of persons. Other means, the word other, defined by the same legal dictionary, West Legal Thesaurus Dictionary, the word other means additional, different, or distinct from that already mentioned. Oh Lord. It means different, distinct, separate from that which is mentioned. So we are dealing now with a category of persons who are distinct, separate, and apart from judges, former judges, and those who are qualified to be judges. How more clear can we get? Then I went to another dictionary, the New Oxford Dictionary of English, to define the word other again. And it says, it is used to refer to a person or thing that is different or distinct from one already mentioned or known about. Different. How the word other can mean similar? How can the word other mean similar? Since the expression similar or such other equivalent expression is not used in Article 161(2), and applying the aforesaid definitions of the word disjunctive and other, it ought to be beyond controversy that Article 161(2) contemplates two different, separate, and distinct categories of persons bearing no similarity with each other. That is what it means. It is for the reasons which I have adumbrated above that our Court of Appeal has ruled that the Jusdem Generis rule, the rule that we keep hearing about, that even the President is employing, perhaps unknowingly, but that Professor Pollard referred to, and this other writer in the Kaieteur News keep expounding about, it is our Court of Appeal in a case called Badri Prasad against Demerara Mutual Life Assurance, reported at 1981, 3 West Indian Report at page 196. That court, our Court of Appeal, the building right over here, ruled that that use them generis rule does not apply to Guyana. And let me read from the language of Chief Justice George, so people can't say it's Nandalal say. It's a man named Kenneth George, a former Chief Justice of the country. This is what he said at page 213 of the case. In the course of his judgment, he stated, I quote, "It is clear that the trial judge, meaning the judge below, was of the view that the use them generis rule formed part of the law of Guyana. It should be noted, however, that it does not appear that his attention was directed to section 5.1 of the interpretation ordinance which was then in force." That is a very general clauses at the time speaking about. The interpretation ordinance to which Chief Justice George referred was the equivalent of the current Interpretation and General Clauses Act. Again, speaking of Section 5 of the Interpretation and General Clauses Act, the learned Chief Justice at page 217 made the following seminal conclusions. I quote, "More specifically, as regards the meaning of the word or, other, or otherwise, prima facie they exclude the application of the use them generis rule, and when used, they are not to be construed as being of the same genus as specific words which preceded them." Unquote. That is the highest court at the time, pronouncing on what or and what other means. I submit in these circumstances that the learned professor and his counterpart in the Kaieteur News are in the same boat with the beleaguered trial judge to whom Chief Justice George referred. Remember, Chief Justice George referred to a trial judge who thought that the use them generis rule applied to Guyana. I give you that explanation, and perhaps it was too legal, but we are dealing with a legal matter. At least one thing the president got right. He said that we are dealing with a constitutional matter, a legal matter. He keeps repeating that. But then you have him also saying this: I am going to choose someone who is fit to be a judge. After you heard what I just said, this is what the president's interpretation of the Constitution is. And this is the problem. This is the problem. Though he has made a proposal to the leader of the opposition to meet through a nominee of the leader of the opposition, unfortunately that may be me, to meet with the Attorney General to discuss this matter, the president has already expressed what his views are. And this is what he said in the State House 2 weeks ago. And he's not really resigning from this position. So, am I not reasonable, or is my apprehension not reasonable that the engagement which he's proposing will fail? Because you heard what my arguments are going to be. And I have a whole other pile of arguments to explain everything. What fit and proper means, and I looked at cases throughout the Commonwealth, and they say universally and uniformly that the term fit and proper is not subjective. Who is fit and proper for Jack Dale can be improper and unfit for Granger. Can be. A person who is fit and proper is fit and proper. You don't change because of the idiosyncrasies of anyone. A person who's fit and proper is fit and proper. Then the president, in his letter to leader of the opposition, requested him to submit another list. That is another error that is being committed. The Constitution speaks to a list of 6 names. A list. And if a list is not submitted, then the president has a special power to appoint someone. A list has been submitted. What the president has rejected is the names on that list. There is no provision for another list to be submitted. 6 more names, perhaps, will have to be submitted, but not another list. I say that to guard against the danger of an interpretation that if this thing continues and we can't find a resolution, the president somehow has a power to appoint. Well, that power is only activated when there is no list, and the leader of the opposition has already submitted a list. So that argument can't arise, and we must not allow it to fester, because in some quarters it is gaining momentum, and it is believed by many that that is the ultimate plan. To work this process, frustrate it, make simple things look impossible, and then, in an attempt to bring some kind of compromise, a person unilaterally exercising a discretion. The law doesn't permit that. And that is why we have submitted a list, so that eventuality cannot take place. I can say much more on this matter, obviously, but I think I will stop here. I believe that the program allows for an interaction with you, and then at that stage, I will be prepared to answer any queries or questions which you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anil. And so that we can have enough time to engage with the contributions from the floor, let me now introduce Leader of the Opposition, His Excellency President Barack Obama.
Colleagues at the head table, distinguished invitees, brothers and sisters, comrades, may I, on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, thank you all for being here today. I know that this issue that is being discussed here has caused a lot of trepidation in the minds of many Guyanese. They see this issue as a crossroad issue for the future of this nation. And how it is resolved will have a lasting impact, not only on our democracy and the future of this country, but our well-being, whether this country can fulfill its promises or it goes backwards. And so this is a vital issue that I believe all Guyanese should get engaged in. Whether you support the People's Progressive Party or not, because of the import of this issue on your lives and the well-being of our country and our future, people have a duty to familiarize themselves with the content of the issue and to take a position. So today we saw a transition in the United States of America from one president to another. And you know how contentious that campaign had been, and how entrenched positions on both sides of the divide in the US have also been. But every presenter in the ceremony that was a dignified one today, that was broadcast to the world, stressed the importance of traditions, the importance of enshrining a democratic tradition, the peaceful transfer of power, and people's freedom being protected, regardless of where you stand politically. And that is at stake for us here in this country. And so, we're happy that you're here. I asked Anil yesterday to invite Basil Williams to come here and to share his views too, because there's one thing that we in the People's Progressive Party are not afraid of, is the open contest of views and ideas. That's something we are not. And we have the confidence in the strength of our case, and the history on this issue, we believe, is on our side, to lead us to the belief that in any such confrontation, our view will prevail about how the Constitution can be interpreted. And so when the President says he is clear about the Constitution, I am also clear about its interpretation. And I am borne out by law, the intent of the amendment from the 1980 Constitution to the current one, and I am borne out by practice. And therefore, we wanted to have an opportunity to share that view with the President. So many people have been calling me, and they are of two opinions. One is that the President is getting bad advice from an incompetent Attorney General. And there is another view that the President intends, on his own, given his philosophy and history, to break with democratic traditions and appoint a chairman as having paid lip service to the process, using obscure legal arguments, appoint a chairman that is sympathetic to the PNC, that will upset the balance at GECOM, and that will convert GECOM into a tool of the PNC with the aim of rigging elections in the future. So there are those two views. If the first view is the dominant one, and it is the truth, that the Attorney General, as he is often done, been giving bad legal advice to the President, we were hoping to meet with the President, not to have tea or coffee or to discuss a personal issue, but to discuss a matter that involves our future. That's why I requested a meeting. So we're not begging for a meeting to go and see Granger and see how wonderful his office is. We believe that that meeting, if the first view is relevant, would have helped to shape his opinion that there is a body, a significant body of or feeling out there, a significant body of evidence and history that points to a direction different from what his Attorney General has been advising him on. That was the purpose of the meeting. Then they put Ramjatan to say, oh, we didn't listen to Granger in Parliament, so he shouldn't meet with us, as though we are looking to have a drink with the President and not to conduct personal national business. But this betrays the vindictive nature of the government, how they see national issues, that it is their preserve. You know, oh, you don't rub our back, you don't listen to us here, we didn't show up here, so we'll give you the shaft when you want another meeting, regardless of whether that meeting is for a national good. And these are the people who talk about social cohesion. And the President seems, his excuses about not wanting the meeting are at best laughable, spurious, because we wanted to share that view with him. But if the second interpretation is true, then I can see why the president doesn't want a meeting. That is, the second view is he intends to get his way. And having gone through a process in a perfunctory manner, which seemed to comply with the Constitution, he would then use their interpretation to appoint, as he has said, someone of his choice. If that view is the dominant one, and that's his intention, then I can see why he does not want to meet. And no amount of legal arguments, as strong as they are, as you have just heard here, the legal arguments will change his opinion, because he will not be swayed by legal arguments. His intent is to get a partisan chairman. And no amount of pointing out the history of the appointment of chairpersons to GECOM would change his mind, because he is already hell-bent on getting his way. And so there is hope if the first view is the relevant one, and we will attend the meeting. We'll attend the meeting with the Attorney General and present our arguments. That's a nightmare thing to do, to talk to Basil Williams. But we will do it. And let's see how it goes. And after that, we will continue to engage. I'm very conscious that I am central in this process, because I hold a constitutional post that is mentioned in this article of the Constitution. And therefore, whatever I say, that is why I've not been too harsh in my judgments. I'm presenting them as options. I've said it's either one view or another that I've heard, but I have an open mind. And I'm prepared to engage in a meaningful way to fulfill my constitutional duties, to see that the Constitution is respected in its intent, its purpose, that clause. We will be engaged in the process. But I want this country to know and to be aware of the possibilities that lie before us. The possibility that this could become one of many other signs we have been seeing, that as the regime gets more desperate, as the economy collapses and they lose support even in their own base, there is a view that they'll become more repressive and return to the old ways of stealing elections, and that there already seems to be a pattern emerging that we have seen, not just this one, but in other areas. We've spoken about birth certificates and the lack of transparency in that process of issuing these. We were told in the Parliament 300,000 were issued in the last year. And we have grave concerns there. We have seen how partial GECOM has become in the case where GECOM has been and should be an independent arbiter. But they have deliberately tried to delay the hearing of our elections petition. They should not be a party to this petition. I was told, well, the chief elections officer filed an affidavit to strike out our petition. They lost that, appealed it, and I was told even in the wrong court. So now we have to fight to get it out of that court and get it into the right court. And then have it heard. And then only after it's heard, then can we return to the hearing of the petition. After having been assured by the international community, just after the elections, and in fact, in the discussions just prior to the elections, that they have had discussions with the judiciary, and as is the practice in surrounding elections petition, that the petition would be heard expeditiously, continuously, until we have a decision. So we yet can't present our case there. But it's not the petition itself, because the petition can only bring new elections, and we are getting ready for new elections. And so it betrays the partisan nature of the machinery itself, GECOM, when they are trying to prevent the hearing, and they should not be a party to the petition. So there are worrying signs that we are seeing. But this is not the past. This is an open society. We have contributed to making Guyana an open society. In the era pre-1992, when the state practically controlled the entire media landscape, or had a significant dominance in the media landscape, people were not exposed to different views, nor could they express themselves publicly. With the opening up of our society now, the advent of social media, this is a different time. When you have an open society, you cannot practice those things that were done in the past and expect that they will go unexposed. And we have a free press in Guyana. Some of them are a little, you know what I mean. I don't want to sound like Mr. Trump. But we have a free society. And we are going to work hard. As I said before, this is the crossroad. We are at the crossroad. If they are serious about working together, if they're serious about social cohesion, if they're serious about this country fulfilling its promise, because with oil money or without oil money, if the People's Progressive Party does not engage in the manner it should and its support base, this country goes nowhere. And so, if they think, and we've seen countries with oil money that have huge levels of poverty that they seem to think that will save them in the future. Huge levels, it's how you spend the money. But this is the crossroad here. And that's why we have to raise awareness. Every Guyanese must stand up now. This is the time to stand up on this issue. Because if we allow one issue to slide, they will push us a little bit harder. They will test us a little bit more on other issues. So here in this country, we have to be conscious. And this is, as I said before, not for PPP supporters alone, for all Guyanese who want this country to make progress. It's for everyone. And we will have the task now of internationalizing this issue, ensuring that the capitals of the countries that are represented here and in the past played such a disproportionate role in our national affairs, that they continue to be apprised of the numerous transgressions against parliamentary democracy, human rights, ordinary people's rights, the divisive acts of this government, and now the attempt to thwart future elections so that they could be partisan or be rigged. All of this is the task of the People's Progressive Party too, and with your support. So I want to thank you. As I said before, I'm not going to make a long speech here today. We're very grateful that you showed up here. I want to thank the panelists who are here, particularly those who are not PPP members or supporters. Well, I don't know about the supporters. Anybody could be in anybody's head. But I know they're not members of the People's Progressive Party. It takes a lot of courage, given the vindictive nature of this government, for them to be here today. Many other people will call you and say, I want to be there, we'd like to be there, but you know these people, how vindictive they are. They judge everyone based on their politics. This has nothing to do with which side of the fence you stand on. This is a national issue, and that's why we're particularly grateful to the two presenters who are here from civil society. So thank you very much. I hope we have a productive engagement, a discussion this afternoon, and we will be engaging you more and more on this issue. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep engaging. We'll always be respectful with the president and engage in a civil manner. But that must not lead them to the belief that we are weak or we don't have strong views because we are civil in our interaction with them. They would be far from the truth, and there would be a miscalculation of how strongly we feel on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Jagdeo. Please excuse Attorney at Law Bert Smith. He had another engagement that started about a half an hour ago, which he has to go to. He would have loved to hear the contributions from the floor also. So thank you, Ronald. Okay, now the floor is open. The remaining panelists will take your questions and your contributions. We have some roving microphones for me. Yes. The contributions from you. Maybe was that a hand or your sig?
I think the legal guys did such a good job. Huh?
Yeah, great.
Maybe if someone has a different view than we have, we could have a little debate.
Someone, if there is a dissenting view, who feels that maybe the leader of the opposition should.
No, I didn't mean that too much.
Okay. Carvin, you have your hand up? Great. This one.
Assumption. Member of the panelists and ladies and gentlemen of the People's Progressive Party, good afternoon. I was a little eager to make a force in projection and making the day, but somebody have to make a start, so I did. And I want to congratulate the panelists for bringing attention this important issue in this country at this moment. However, my question is, I'm seeing a little bit, it costs me a lot of money the other day to go to the internet to print the Constitution of Guyana, to really go down into depth, and I come across two particular issues, one in 1980, when they talk about the judges and so on, and then there's appendix in 1995 amendments, which talks about the fit and proper person, if I'm correct. However, my opinion after listening to the panelists is either Mr. Pastor William had a very bad law teacher, or the president had a very bad English teacher. However, I want to say one thing, that from where I don't know if I'm right, but from where I picked up in the Constitution is that when a president takes the oath of office, two words I want to take out of that oath is that uphold and preserve the Constitution of this country. And I feel that the president of this country, President Granger, has somewhat breached that amendment, that particular constitution that he so praised and take oath to uphold. And I want the panelists, I don't know if they're putting them a little bit of more into it, but this is our duty. I feel, in my opinions, that the president have actually breached the Constitution when he failed to adhere to the amendments of the appointment of the chairman of the Elections Commission. And I feel as a citizen, an ordinary citizen, that regardless of what dictatorship is being peddled in the AFC, PNC, or APU, they have, as the former president rightly said, they are now patterning the road so that they can start to create some sort of rigging in the future elections. So, by appeal to the panelists, former President who is here, this is a very important issue. As I said, I was a little technical today before start, but I want you to come up and give your opinion as well too. That my contentment is that I think, and this issue the President of this country merely breached the Constitution of this country. And there is some form of amenities in the Constitution in regards in the removal of presidents who breach the Constitution, who fail to uphold and preserve the rights of this Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There is a microphone just behind Mr. Abdullah, his first post. And then, as the President,
one short question. Can a recently retired judge be nominated?
okay, we're going to take
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I am not up in the legal arena, but I'd like to know one thing. I have read in the news media, printed media that is, that Baxter Williams has said, regardless of what the opposition, if the president do not agree with the list, he has to supply several lists. I'd like to know which part of the Constitution has this several lists listed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anil, you got three there.
As I said in my presentation, the Constitution speaks so expressly, so it doesn't speak to more than one list. That's the first thing. And even in the letter to the leader of the opposition, the president speaks to another list. The Constitution, what is permissible is the substitution of names on that list that is already submitted. So you can have 6 names more coming, but not many lists.
Yeah, and to deal with the other question, yes, I think there is no restriction on recently retired judges if they can fit into both categories that we believe in the Article 161(2), both fit and proper category as well as a judge who held office before. In relation to the breach of the Constitution, whether the President has breached the Constitution, we're in the middle of a process. He has expressed a view that we disagree with, an interpretation of the Constitution that we disagree with. We are still in the process. Next week, hopefully, he's written saying that a representative of mine should meet with the Attorney General. That will take place. When they come back from that meeting, I will then decide what to do. But it's all geared towards continuing the process and engaging with the President, hopefully for an outcome that would be acceptable to all of the parties involved. But there have been other breaches of the Constitution by this government, including in Carvel Duncan's matter, when I think he he was in a matter in court that he was subsequently, the judge threw out, and the president named a commission. It's a commission of inquiry, right? To commission under the Constitution to investigate him, largely because they want to get rid of him. They wanted to get rid of him for political reasons. So I believe that in that case, the Constitution was breached, and many other cases. Whether you seek remedies for the breach of the Constitution, I think he was implying an impeachment or something of that sort. Those are issues to be looked at various times by different people. But at this stage, on this particular matter, I don't think it warrants any, because there hasn't been action. The president has not named the chairman of the Elections Commission as yet. He has expressed certain views, and I'm hoping that having heard our views, maybe from here tonight or from other sources, that he may change his interpretation. Thank you.
Great, the mic is still open. We have, if we stick to the 7 o'clock schedule, we have about 20 more minutes. Sorry, Nigel.
In response to the question about the president breaching the Constitution, it is not my belief with regards to Article 161.2 that this has occurred. What has occurred is that the president has placed undue emphasis on the first 4 categories amongst the alternatives to determine the chairman of the Elections Commission. He has primarily limited his pronouncements to persons related to judgeships and ignored the category for any other fit and proper person. And I think it is in this regard that we find the president wanting.
Great, so the mic is still open. It's just behind the first post, or you can use the one I have in my hands.
That's for purpose of clarification and to give the panelists an opportunity to ventilate this issue some more. I agree with our people saying the insurance company that using the nation does not apply. And that puts me to the argument that runs by Bullard and Maxwell Edwards to name those two. I am inclined to the view, like the former General, that the question of A-list does not accommodate representation of others. Now, when I see the press that Pastor Williams is purported to have said that the leader of the opposition will have to submit several lists to the president, if so required by the president, until he gets it right. I am inclined to the view that Basil Williams is probably looking at Article 111 of the Constitution. And this is what, Mr. Nandlar, I would like you to deal with. The thing is, I don't have the Constitution in front of me, but paraphrasing what is in Article 111, yes, Article 111 does say that where the President under any other article of the Constitution is required to act on the advice or recommendation of any personal authority, he shall once, I emphasize the word once, refer the advice or recommendation to the party submitting it for it to be reviewed. And if that review is sent, the Constitution stipulates the direction in which the President has to go. So that is one aspect, whether it is possible that the Attorney General is looking at Article 111 and laboring under the belief I don't want to say misconception, that Article 111 applies. Secondly, the other point, which perhaps you may want to throw some light on, is with respect to Article 161(2). There are two categories set out in the article. One from which the leader of the opposition can appoint, and that includes, the leader of the opposition can recommend, and that includes or any other person. The other category from which the president, acting unilaterally, assuming he considers the list unacceptable, so there is no list submitted. I'm going with their interpretation for the purpose of the argument. It is not without significance to my mind that the phrase or any other fit or proper person has been omitted. So the president doesn't have the scope to appoint. He can only appoint from judge, former judge, qualified to be judge, or justice of appeal. And when you look at the stuff which you exhibited to the audience earlier, that he intends to appoint somebody with that legal background, is he telegraphing his position that the list submitted by the leader of the opposition will never be found to be acceptable, so he will go ahead and appoint from the category which the Constitution allows him. I will stop there for now. There are other issues, those two can be dealt with now. Thanks.
You have raised several issues. Let me deal with them one by one. As the leader of the opposition said very emphatically, if the president wants a predetermined result, whatever his interpretation is, obviously one that is not in keeping with what the Constitution says, and an interpretation that could be obviously wrong, but it is to satisfy a predetermined view that he has, then we can't do anything other than wait and then challenge it. No matter how much arguments I put forward, no matter how much case law I cite, no matter how much antecedents we look at in terms of the qualifications of the previous holders of the office, no matter if we look at the nominees that came from a senior council as one might, which included the president name himself, and the president doesn't appear to be a judge to me, or possessed of judge-like qualities. In fact, the president said during the elections campaign that he has been a PNC member for 30 years. Knowing that he was a PNC member, he accepted the nomination to go on that list. So he had political partisanship. Now, a different thing is being mounted. But that's an aside. Let me get back. So, Ronald, the point I'm making is that the president can't properly, we can only hope and we can only deal with what the Constitution says and what's expected of those upon whom the Constitution discharge duties and obligations. In fact, that is why I'm emphasizing about the list, that there is only one list. That is why that special power that the president has cannot be activated, because he has a list before him. He has a list as provided for. That's what the Constitution says. Once a list has been provided for, once a list is submitted as provided for, then that power that he has cannot arise, or can't be exercised. So that deals with that issue. The other issue that you raised about 111. Now, the Constitution outlines different processes by which obligations are to be discharged. For example, the Judicial Service Commission is required under the Constitution to make recommendations to the President. For the appointment of the Chief Justice and Chancellor, the President must secure an agreement of the leader of the opposition. In terms of appointment of Police Service Commission Chairman, the President must get advice of. I gave you those three processes to show you three different words we use. One speaks to advice, one speaks to agreement, one speaks to recommendation. 111 speaks only to the occasion where an advice has to be tendered to the President or a recommendation has to be made to the President. In that instance, or in those instances, the President can send back the advice or the recommendation once. And if the person to whom he sends it back accepts the recommendation or changes it, then another consequence flows. In my view, that 111 has no applicability whatsoever to this constitutional process, where the leader of the opposition is required to submit a list of names. 111 applies to where advice is required or where recommendation is required from some other agency. So 111 has no applicability at all. I think I answered the question.
Just saying the entire process that was laid out by the leader of the opposition earlier about engagement and so on fails, and the president decides to use whatever power he has to appoint a chairman. My question is there any legal basis, any section of any law, any section of the Constitution that empowers him to do so? As one, two, if the president says he want to put X person as a chairman of GECOM, does that person have to be accepted by the leader of the opposition? And the third thing is, what are the legal recourses if such thing happens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that I feel a bit embarrassed and flummoxed. And I'm glad I'm not a lawyer, and I'm happy with the presentations that have been made. But on the question of either or, this was the kind of thing you used to get mixed for a lily, we see in my day. You used to get mixed with apples or oranges. And so, it is otherwise a fairly simple problem, and I think if we're all gathered here today on this matter, we should resolve ourselves on what position we're putting out in this matter. It's a simple problem. It's a simple issue, easily understood. And on a simple issue like this, we should resolve ourselves and make a statement as to the public.
Okay, panelists, we have two views, the what if and Rosen proposing that out of this meeting some kind of action, perhaps a resolution plan that will go on to the council.
After the comrade who asked a series of questions, as to the option, look, no one has the authority, the license, or the right to violate the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law. The Constitution creates the presidency. The Constitution is above the President. The President is a creature of the Constitution. So he is bound by the Constitution. So he has to obey the Constitution. If the President, like anyone else, acts in violation of the Constitution, then legal remedy naturally flows. The court, the High Court, has the jurisdiction and the authority to issue an innumerable number of orders and reliefs to ensure that constitutional violations are avoided, are rectified, or are compensated for. The President has immunity, and people may believe that those immunities prevent him from being sued. The immunities only prevent the President from being sued personally, but his actions remain challengeable if they violate the Constitution or the ordinary laws of the land, and he can be sued through the legal representative of the state, who is the Attorney General. And we have done that already several times. So that's not new law. That is not new law. The president's actions are challengeable in the courts, and he's not above the law, as people may think.
We have noted with significant disapproval the recourse of the president to making public statements about his positions on this matter long before he even responds to my letters, etc. And I think it's designed to create in people's head or their mindset that they stand on strong grounds and to prejudice people, because I've seen online a whole slew of people saying that the fit and proper part of the 161.2 was not in the current constitution, that we had misread it. And they have internet trolls that the government hires that pushes this view. And so people were saying, oh, the leader of the opposition did not comply with the law, with the 161.2, because this fit and proper person is not in the Article 161.2. So we had to point that out. And so that is why I had to say, give a hypothetical situation, what would have happened had the meeting taken place. So I said, if we go to the president, if we meet with him, and we explain legally our position and the history of the matter, and he still persists with the interpretation that he is according to the matter, but he is genuinely interested in solving the matter in an impartial manner and without playing politics, as he has said, then we would have urged that we approach the court for an interpretation. When I said CCJ, I meant you had to go through the process. Of course, his legal people started suddenly saying, you can't go straight to the CCJ. What I'm talking about is the interpretation. But they started nitpicking. And I said also that if this does not succeed, we will challenge it ourselves. So I had outlined at that time a course of action, that if he goes unilaterally, we'll have to challenge it. So I think we have been in the public domain already explaining our views, how we would have approached the matter if and had he been more accommodative and genuinely wanted to solve the problem. And we're still hopeful that after the meeting with Williams, that there will be a meeting or the process of engagement would lead to that outcome. But should it not, we've already made it public as to how we will approach the matter too. And this is challenging, right? And we will have to internationalize this issue. This will become a serious issue on which a new battleground will be created. Thank you.
Nigel is in favor as he ended his presentation of dialogue at the highest level. Okay, we can take one more contribution. Mr. Japon.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the table. What I'd like to find out now, there is a regulation in 1980 Constitution, I think, that I understand. They have been working on that. But again, coming back to the new Constitution, the Carter formula, what I would have liked to see, the Carter formula had within itself fit or proper person. I want to see over the years, fit and proper person had been used over the years. Why should it be an objection now to use the same Carter formula? It is very important that this issue If this cannot be done, I feel this should be legally challenged in court, as what our leader just mentioned. But at the same time, I feel of all that had happened relating to the issue, we need to get down to Carter himself. He was here to create a problem. Let him solve it. This is what we need to do. It's legal, we've done nothing wrong. We have to do that. Now, what I'd like to say again, this is why Guyana Election Commission object to the filing of that petition by the DPPC. Why have they had to do that? Then they were placed directly there to look at the interests of all stakeholders. They themselves decide to be fighting against something that they have to be representing. Something is totally wrong. It's in the commission itself now. They have issues, and I would be happy if all these issues could be addressed. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I think the women are too silent in this place. And I must say, on behalf of the women of Guyana, we are strong, the women are a force, and we can reckon with the AP and new AFC anytime. We have to stand up and fight for our children and our grandchildren. This is Guyana, it belongs to all of us, no matter our color, our race, or our religion. We are Guyanese. Thank you.
I totally agree with the comment by President Jacques. That's a good way to end. So on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, its executive and members, let me first thank the panelists, including Mr. Nigel Hines, who are named Williams, and President Jacques and Attorney General Nadrod. The persons who are responsible for the meeting place, Humanayana, and all of you who came.
A meeting was held with the opposition as one of the new names that might be put forward to the president.
You just heard what I said. You just heard what I said, and then you'll ask me that question. Right now, the only thing that we are doing is that we'll be acceding to the president's request that one of my representatives meet with Basil Williams, which will happen hopefully next week. So this afternoon I wrote the president saying that we are pursuing this matter, and Basil Williams has been written to. And so we are going to wait the engagement we have there before we decide on the new course of action. Okay, so that is what so far has happened. Nothing else.
If a new list, if you're required to produce a new list.
Yes, but that's all hypothetical. So after that meeting, should I have to submit a new list, I would probably consult broadly again with people so that I can get the best names to go forward.
On the matter of consultation, the African Cultural and Development Association had publicly stated that a segment of the Guyanese population, including organizations such as ACDA, had been omitted during your first round of consultations.
I'm not aware. The invitations went to about 40 organizations. Some showed up, some did not. So I don't know which organizations particularly. There are many others from across the country who have said that they were not invited to. If we look at the people who came, though, we had the churches that I thought are represented of every race in Guyana. You had the Christian churches, the Hindu churches, the Muslim churches, and I thought that they represent people of every race and religion. If we consult with the representatives of the religious organizations, the three main religions in Guyana, that's 95% of our society. because they represent people of different faiths and different races.
In light of that,
Yes, if AGDA is welcome in my office at any time on any issue. I said it at the Congress, we are there for people who support us and people who do not support us. And I saw AGDA took a political position once when they went to that Critchlow event. But they are welcome, even if they're politically supportive of APNA. They're welcome to my office, both as leader of the opposition and General Secretary of the PPP at any time to discuss any matter and to share their views with me. And I will listen to them. So they're invited at any time. And yes, now that they have expressed a desire to be consulted, yes, they possibly will be, should I need to.
Thank you. Bye.